So today we're going to start talking about, in particular, linear functions and equations. Again, should be a big review count for one, but if not, hopefully it'll refresh your memory today. How do you define a linear equation? To me, right here is the key word, right? It makes a line is a linear equation. So anything that doesn't make a line is not linear. There's some rules of how you get a linear equation. So one of them is you cannot do anything other than add, subtract, or multiply a letter and a constant. So a letter variable is like x or y. A constant is a number. So you could have like 2 plus x. You could have 2 minus x. You could have 2 times x. What you cannot have is 2 divided by x, right? You cannot divide a letter in the bottom and make a straight line. You could do that with 1. What else to be a linear function? You cannot multiply letters together, right? Like x times y equals 7. That is not a linear function. And the other thing you cannot have in a linear function is you cannot have any exponent on a letter other than 1. And that's the big thing. In Algebra 1, you really only learned about 2 equations for the most part. You learned about linear and quadratic. And the big difference is one has an exponent of 1 and one has an exponent of 2. And I think the easiest way to think about a linear function is that it can be written in the form that hopefully you remember from Algebra 1. Oh, I covered it back up. Good old slope-intercept form, right? Or you can write that as y equals mx plus b. X and y both have one exponent. X and y are not multiplied together. Nothing crazy going on there. M and b are numbers in that problem. Hopefully that equation is lots of those. So now is where you can go on Socrative. So look at these first 3 questions. These should be questions 1, 2, and 3 on Socrative that says, is it linear? If not, explain why. Well, I didn't put that you have to explain on there. I gave you multiple choice. Yes, no, IDK. Hopefully you don't pick IDK. That means I'm giving you a 50-50 shot there. So take a minute. If you have it already, to answer those 3 questions, and it should tell you right away if you're right or wrong. Alright, we're getting close. So, it's kind of weird because I went A, B, C, so that's not going to take me there. But is number 1 a linear? This is good old y equals mx plus b. Nothing crazy going on. So, yes. You should have said yes. What about b? If you had to explain in words why not, what would you say? No, because not in slope-intercept form. Yes? What would you say? Oh, like, you mean like this? You can add 2 to x, right? Like over here, we're adding 5 to 2x, right? Like that's allowed. Mackenzie? This exponent right here, right? That's the really big thing there, which is another way. It's not in slope-intercept form because of the exponent. That's another way of saying it. But like if that was just x plus 2, that would have been linear. But because that had an exponent bigger than 1, that's what makes it not linear, because you can't have an exponent bigger than 1. That actually makes a graph that looks like this. That's crazy, right? That is not linear. So, not because it's not in slope-intercept form, that is a good answer. No, because of the exponent, good answer. Alright, so exponent Greater than 1. That's going to be my shorthand answer there. And then what about C? Kind of just looks like A, just mixed up. No, exponent's bigger than 1. X is not multiplied by another letter. X is not divided in the bottom. So, yes, is the answer to that. And the first couple questions on your homework are just like this. All right. But I just have a little story problem here. And so that's also the next question on the soccer disc. So you can go ahead and do that if you're ready to do it. But it says the linear function f of c equals 1.8c plus 32. That's linear. It meets those requirements. Can be used to find the degrees Fahrenheit that are equivalent to the number of degrees Celsius. On the Celsius scale, the normal body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. What is it in degrees Fahrenheit? So think about what you would do, what you would plug in. You need a calculator, you can Google it, or you can get one up here. And think about how you would evaluate that problem. You should be able to type that in, and I tried to write it in a multiple ways, but it would count your way right. You might type it in a different way than I could have thought of, and it still might be right. I'll be able to tell you that if I see it. So when you have a story problem, if you're one of those people that sees words and freaks out, when you have a story problem, you want to think about where am I going to put that 37 in this equation? Plug it in, work it out. Now there's two of them. Your Angelina and your Angelin. Right, so if they're telling us the Celsius is 37 degrees, that's just function notation, just like we did yesterday. So I'm just going to replace C with 37. And remember that I want to know what that equals. So this is like your work, but you want to plug in that to the calculator. You want to work that out. Maybe you know what your multiplier is. Should work out to be 98.6 degrees. I put in that you just put degrees. Questions on how I got that? You're going to see kind of a pattern in our homework of that. Any of your homework, you just like our example. And then your homework, you need to do problem. So that you should be able to apply some steps to your problem. Okay, two more things. There's three types of linear equations that we write in. We use slope-intercept form all the time. We use that graph. I love point-slope form. We use that to write equations. There's a third form, standard form, that I feel like is the lonesome way to write linear equations because we don't really use it to graph. I forgot it off. But standard form of a linear equation is written in ax plus by equals c. But there's lots of rules to put something in standard form. That's probably why no one likes it. One rule is that a, b, and c have to be integers. So that means when you have something in standard form, you can have no fractions and no decimals. So you have to kind of use some algebra knowledge if you see decimal or fraction. You put something in standard form, you have to multiply by the denominator, or you have to multiply to get rid of your decimal, because it's not in standard form if that's in there. It also says that it has a greatest common factor of 1. That just means, like, if everything is divisible by 2, that you could divide everything by 2. So an example of that would be, like, you had 2x plus 4y equals 8. that would technically not be in standard form because you could divide everything by 2 there. You see that? So like technically that would not be in standard form. They would want you to make that divide by 2, x plus 2y equals 4. Those are the same equation, but standard form, they want it to all look the same at the end. So that's what that greatest common factor of 1 means. And then the other thing that people forget in standard form is that a has to be positive. So that means that the x term always has to be positive. So what really tricks people on multiple choice tests is you're like, oh, x and y are together. That's marked yes. But it's not in standard form if the x is not positive. Okay? So, example 3 says, write in standard form, identify A, B, and C. You don't have to identify A, B, and C on your Socrative thing. But I'm going to kind of do this one with you. Put this in standard form. You have options here. As long as x and y are on the same side, x is positive, there's no fractions or decimals, you're in standard form. For me, I always look at the x, and if x is already positive, I'm going to keep x where it is. If x is negative, I'm going to move it to the other side or divide by a negative. So for me, on this one, I'm going to leave that 3x right there. But I know I need to move the y over here. So how could I move the y over here? I'm just going to subtract it. Right? So I'm not solving anything here. I'm just moving x's and y's around. So I'm going to subtract y over here. It's up to you if you do the show work or not. So what do I have over here? Now I have 3x minus y. And I'm just going to kind of leave it blank here. I don't want this 9, right? That's the c value. This minus 9 needs to go over here. So how am I going to move it over there? I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to add 9 to the other side. And so I'm going to know that the 9 is going to go over here. Not the only way to do that problem. You could have subtracted 3x and divided by a negative, and that would have also worked to get you in standard form. As long as x and y are on the same side, as long as x is positive, as long as there's no fractions or decimals, you should get the right answer here. And I think I wrote, you can try it in Socrative here, you can write it like this. You can write it 3x minus y equals 9. It's hard to type answers on here because I never know, are you going to put spaces or are you not going to put spaces? So if you write this and it says it's wrong, I can see that. I think I can. Oh no, look. So Ellie put a space on an equal sign. It's wrong. You're right. So that's what's annoying about this. Like, whoever did this as a quiz, it will tell you you're wrong, and then you would be that. Alright, so if you have a question on that, go ahead and answer this one. Multiple choice. On Socrative. It is question 6 on Socrative. Write this in standard form. Pick which one of these meets the criteria. X and y are on the same side. X has to be positive. No fractions and no decimals. And one other thing to talk about. So, if you just remember that x has to be positive here, there's only one possible answer, because all of these have a negative x except for c. So c meets the requirements because x and y are on the same side together, x is positive, no fractions or decimals. Right? So, last thing we want to talk about is intercepts and graphing with intercepts. Again, words that we use all the time, words that Ms. Bai probably used all the time in Algebra 1. An intercept is where something crosses. If you're a football person and there's an interception, it's because someone from the other team crosses the path of the ball. and takes it, right? So an intercept on a graph is just when it crosses the axis. So the x-intercept is just a point on the graph where it crosses the x-axis. And if you think about every point on the x-axis has the same y-coordinate, right? So if I was going to graph this point, this could be like the point 1, 0. And over here, this could be like the point 5, 0. And here it could be like the point -3, 0. Every point on the x-axis has a y-coordinate of 0. So it's really easy to find the x-intercept because you just make y equal to 0. So the y-coordinate is always 0. The y-intercept gets way more fame in algebra because of slope-intercept form that we graph the y-intercept. But the y-intercept is just where your graph crosses the y-axis. And if you think about the y-axis here, every point on the y-axis has an x-coordinate of 0, right? Like 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 7. So to find the y-intercept, all you have to do is make the x equal to 0. So intercepts, we get so hung up on slope-intercept form of the graph. We forget that finding intercepts, graphing using intercepts, is a really quick way to sketch a linear graph. So that's my last thing. We can't really sketch our graphs on Socrative, but we can type in our intercepts. So again, I'm going to do this with you, and then I'll let you do the next one. So it's up to you if you can just skip this or wait till we're done here. If you want to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, you just have to make one letter equal to 0, solve for what's left, and then switch it. It doesn't matter which one you start with, because you're going to see what happens when I do this. So if I made x equal to 0, you can actually plug 0 in there. But when I do multiply anything times 0, it just is 0. It's nothing. So if I made x equal to 0, I always think about, like, that's gone now, right? So, like, if x equals 0, I'm only left with y minus 4 equals 0. You with me on that? Because this whole thing would be 0. So if I plug in 0 for x, look what you're left with. Can you solve that equation for y? All I got to do is add 4 over, and I get y equals 4. Is that the x-intercept or the y-intercept? How do you know it's the y and not the x? Because it says y equals, so you don't have to even worry about which one you're solving for. So you can do this 2 ways. Don't type this on Socrative yet, because you have to have 2 answers, because it's the x and the y-intercept. But you could just type y equals 4. You also could write the ordered pair. Basically what we said is when x is 0, we found the y that goes with it. So either one of those answers is okay. You type that in the Socrative right now, it's going to say you're wrong, because you also have to find the x-intercept. There's 2 answers. So that's only half the problem. Now we got to do it the other way. Now you got to think about if y equals 0, what are we left with? So go back to this. Now if y equals 0, you could actually plug it in there. But again, for me, I always just like cover it up. Like y is gone. And what am I left with in this problem? Negative 2x minus 4 equals 0. Because now the 0 sort of. What happens is people start doing this really quickly in their heads and they make little negative mistakes. So my advice is just take your time to figure it out. Because now I just have an equation with x left in it, because y was 0. And I can just solve that equation and get negative 2x equals 4. I can divide by negative 2, and I get x equals negative 2. Which is an okay way to write it, but you can also write it that we just found that the x is negative 2 when the y is 0. So I put on Socrative, if you want to type those in, I put like y equals 4, comma x equals negative 2. I also put these. I put some with spaces and some without spaces. I'm sure you're going to think of a way to type it in. It's not the same as mine. Order there or no. There's 2 different points on the graph. right? So think about when you graph this, and this is the part I really want you to know how to do, which you can't do on Socrative. And it's okay. If you typed it in with more spaces or less spaces than mine, and then marked it wrong, it's okay, because you know you're right, and I know you're right. Again, one person has that. That's that. I typed in 4 different answers, and I really come up with an equation. Not you. Alright, so if you are going to graph this, as long as you keep the x and the y straight, this is a really quick way to graph, especially if they're not fractions or decimals. The y-intercept is 4, so on the y-axis, I could go up to 4 and make a dot. The x-intercept is -2, so on the x-axis, at -2, I can make a dot. So that's why you can't make it one answer, Angelina, because you would be graphing the point -2, 4, which is not on my graphic, right? Like, it's 2 separate points. They're both the intercepts. And then you can make a very quick graph. Especially when they're nice numbers like that, you can probably do that just as quickly as graph. So kind of, we always keep this out for 1, and then we just go with it for 1. Okay. So try this one if you haven't already, and you can just try it on the paper if you want. Oh, you know why? I wrote it first. And you're right, I didn't think about it. So it was 8. You'll still get it. And because I did that last one first with Y, now you're doing one first. You're like, right, so I just made my 2 equations, and again, I just get those by covering up the x and writing what's left, covering up the y and writing what's left. No matter where it is in the problem, I just write everything that's left after I make those zeros. And then just watch your signs here. So you get negative y equals -6. Remember, there's like a 1 in front of there. So you get y equals 6, or the point 0, 6. And on this one, you would get subtract 6 over, and you would get -6. Divide by 3, you would get -2. And again, especially if you're making that chart yesterday to graph, this is a really quick way to graph. Because I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The x is at -2. That's a table graph. So I can get a quick sketch of that graph. So I put the last question number 9 there of like, do you like doing this? Do you like having to answer questions on there? And then I can see what you're saying. Some like, the show me something like something like something in there. Something I appreciate it. Something like something I don't know. Something all of you. I can be better at writing answers, but learning curve. What you're doing now, I have to learn this. say why not. The next door, put it in standard form. There are some with fractions there. Actually, I talked about some already. 9 and 10 is intercepts, and then there's a couple of story problems, and there's a couple on that as well. Try those story problems.